It was one of those perfect summer days, the kind that made the ocean shimmer like glass and made you forget everything waiting back home. I was barefoot in the sand, sunglasses on, letting the warmth sink into my skin. Liam was beside me, carrying our drinks, teasing me about something stupid I said earlier. He always did that, tease just enough to make me roll my eyes but smile anyway. He'd been my closest friend for years. The kind of friend who knew the names of my childhood pets, who could tell when I was faking a laugh, who remembered the brand of tea I liked when I was sick. We were on a weekend trip with a group of friends, but everyone else had wandered off. It was just me and Liam by the shore now, and somehow, it didn't feel strange. If anything, it felt easier than being around the group. We talked about work, travel plans we never followed through on, and all the usual nonsense that didn't really matter. But beneath it all, there was this current. Unspoken, subtle, but there. Liam looked good, better than I wanted to admit. His shirt was half unbuttoned, and the sea breeze kept messing up his hair. I caught myself looking too long. I had a partner back home. We'd been together for nearly 6 years. Stable, predictable, comfortable. But lately, comfort had started to feel more like distance. Texts unanswered, conversations dull, kisses routine. I told myself it was just a phase. Every long relationship goes through it. But sitting next to Liam, laughing without effort, I couldn't help but notice the difference. He told a joke and nudged me with a shoulder. I laughed, more from the contact than the joke. I didn't move away. Maybe he noticed. Maybe I wanted him to. He tossed a pebble into the water and asked, "Do you ever think about what your life would look like if one thing had gone differently?" It felt like a random question, but it landed heavily. I didn't answer right away. I thought about saying something light, but the truth rose too quickly. "Yeah," I said. "Sometimes." We didn't say much after that. The sun started to dip lower, casting long shadows on the sand. I wrapped my arms around my knees and stared at the horizon. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was heavy, comfortable, but charged. A wave came up suddenly and soaked our feet. I shrieked, and Liam laughed. He offered his hand to help me up, and when I took it, something shifted. His hand lingered. His thumb brushed mine. I didn't let go right away. Neither did he. He looked at me differently. Not just like a friend. And I let it happen. I told myself it was just a moment. A weird, fleeting thing brought on by nostalgia and salt water and the pink sky. But I felt it crack something open. We started walking again toward the dunes. He talked about a date he went on a few weeks ago, said it was fine, but there was no spark. I joked about how his standards were too high. He said, "Or maybe I already know what I want, and I've just been waiting for the timing to be right." I didn't respond. I felt my heart skip, then thud in my chest. The way he looked at me made it clear he wasn't talking about some hypothetical girl. And the worst part? I wasn't shocked. Part of me had always known. Years ago, when we first became close, there'd been a night after too many drinks when we almost kissed. But I was seeing someone new, and we laughed it off the next day. Never brought it up again. But it never really disappeared, did it? That memory floated to the surface now, like a message in a bottle I didn't want to read. I was too aware of how close we were standing. The sound of the waves. The soft brush of his arm against mine as we walked. I should have stepped away. Said something. Anything. But I didn't. I let the moment stretch. I let it breathe. We sat again, this time higher up where the wind was stronger and the world felt quieter. I told him about my partner. How things had changed. I didn't say everything, but I said enough. He listened without interrupting. When I looked at him, his eyes were softer than I'd ever seen them. There was no judgment, just knowing. And then he said, "You deserve to feel wanted." It wasn't some line. It wasn't smooth or practiced. It was raw. It made my throat tighten. I didn't answer. Couldn't. I looked down at the sand instead, letting his words settle into the silence. That night, as we walked back toward the beach house, we didn't talk much. But I knew. We both knew. Something had shifted. The line between us wasn't where it used to be. Maybe it never was. He was quiet for most of the day after that, like he was giving me space or waiting for me to say something first. I didn't. I couldn't figure out what the right move was, and every time I looked at him, I saw the weight of yesterday in his eyes. He wasn't pressuring me, just present, constantly aware. We walked along the boardwalk later, ice cream in hand, pretending like everything was normal. It wasn't. The sun was starting to set again. That orange glow stretched across the sky, like the world was putting on a show just for us. We sat on a bench, watching waves crash, not saying much. He turned toward me and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded too quickly. He didn't push. Then he said, "Do you think we'd be good together?"
Just like that.
No build-up. Just dropped it like it had been waiting on the tip of his tongue forever. I looked at him, and for once I didn't deflect with sarcasm. I said, "I don't know." Because I didn't. I knew we fit in ways I didn't fit with my partner anymore, but I didn't know if that meant anything real or just temporary loneliness dressed up as something bigger. He kept his gaze steady. "I've thought about it," he said. "More than I should. Even when you were happy with him, I thought about it." The honesty hit like a wave. No drama, no games. Just truth. I asked him why he never said anything before. He shrugged. "I didn't want to be the reason you left someone. I thought maybe you'd figure it out on your own someday." I didn't know what to say to that, because part of me already had figured it out. I just hadn't been ready to admit it out loud. I started rambling about how relationships aren't easy, how no one is perfect, how maybe I was just projecting, how timing is always messy. He let me go on, let me spin in circles until I ran out of breath. Then he leaned in. Slowly, carefully. He wasn't assuming anything. I could have pulled away. I didn't. Our lips met, and I felt the ground tilt. It wasn't desperate or rushed. It was like opening a door I didn't know had been locked. His hand rested against my neck, and I felt his heartbeat through his fingertips. It was steady, certain. I kissed him back. Not because I was caught up in the moment, not because I was drunk or sad or confused, but because I wanted to. Because I'd been wanting to. When we finally broke apart, I didn't say anything. I just looked at him, and he looked at me like he had a million things he could say but didn't want to ruin it by picking the wrong one. We walked back to the house in silence. But it wasn't the awkward kind. It was full. Heavy. Like we'd crossed a line we couldn't pretend wasn't there anymore. I wanted to feel guilty. I should have. But all I felt was clarity. Later that night, he knocked on my door. No one else was around. I opened it, and he just stood there, waiting. I stepped aside without saying a word. He walked in, and I closed the door behind him. There was no speech, no dramatic declarations. Just two people who knew exactly what they were doing.
We didn't rush. We didn't speak.
Every movement was deliberate, slow, cautious but certain. His hands on my skin didn't feel wrong. They felt like something I had been missing without even realizing it. It wasn't wild or messy. It was calm. Intimate. Every kiss, every breath felt like a quiet apology for all the years we'd wasted pretending there was nothing there. Afterward, we laid there side by side. My head on his shoulder, his fingers tracing circles on my back. I stared at the ceiling, half numb, half overwhelmed. He didn't ask what it meant. He didn't ask what came next. He just held me like he knew I didn't have the answers yet and wasn't going to push for them. I thought about my partner. About how long it had been since I felt wanted like this.
Seen like this.
Not just loved out of habit, but chosen. There was a difference, and now that I'd felt it again, I couldn't unfeel it. At some point, I got up and looked at my phone. A text from my partner lit up the screen. "Miss you.
Can't wait to see you."
Thinking of coming early. My stomach flipped. Not out of excitement, but dread. Liam sat up behind me. He didn't say anything, but he could see it on my face. He knew. I turned to him and said, "Everything's about to get complicated." He nodded once. "It already is." The morning after, everything was quieter. Not because anything was wrong, but because the air had changed. I woke up earlier than usual, stared at the ceiling, and tried to make sense of the fact that nothing felt like a mistake. That scared me more than guilt ever could. Liam wasn't in the room anymore. I found him in the kitchen, making coffee like it was just another morning. He handed me a mug, our fingers brushing, and neither of us said anything about the night before. We didn't have to. It was all there in the way he looked at me like he already knew what I was going to say. The notification hit while I was sipping coffee. A flight confirmation. My partner was arriving tonight. No warning. A surprise. I felt the floor shift under me again. I didn't know what kind of face to make, so I didn't make one. I just stared at the screen and nodded to myself, like that would slow down time. Liam didn't ask what the message said. He saw it over my shoulder, and I think that hurt more than if I'd told him. He leaned against the counter and said, "So what now?" I didn't answer. I didn't know. My mind was running full speed, replaying last night, comparing touches, words, memories, trying to figure out if I was the kind of person who could go back to pretending. We spent the day together, but it was different. There was distance now, not the cold kind, but the uncertain kind. He didn't try to hold my hand. I didn't lean into him like I had before. Every move was calculated. Every look carried a question. When I finally got back to my room to pack my things, the door creaked open behind me. Liam stood there like he wasn't sure if he should speak. "Can we talk?" I nodded, still folding clothes I hadn't even worn. He sat down on the edge of the bed and said, "I don't regret it. But I need to know, was it just a break in your routine, or was it real?" I hated how calm he sounded, like he'd been preparing for either answer. I told him I didn't know, that I couldn't answer that in a single sentence, that my life with someone else didn't just disappear overnight, that even if things had been distant, it was still years of something real. But I also admitted something I hadn't said out loud until then, that being with him felt like breathing after holding it for too long. He looked at me for a long time and finally said, "I'm not asking you to burn your life down for me. But I won't pretend this was nothing. I won't let you walk away like we didn't change something." The weight of that hit hard. Because deep down, I wanted to believe this was just one mistake. One slip. But it wasn't. It was a mirror I couldn't unsee. It showed me everything I'd been pretending not to feel for years. The sound of a car pulling up snapped me back. My partner was here. Earlier than expected, like the text had promised. Liam stood. I stood. We didn't hug. We didn't touch. He just said, "You don't owe me anything. But don't lie to yourself." I left him in the room and walked out to meet my partner. Smiles, hugs, a quick kiss. They noticed nothing. Or maybe they did but didn't want to see it. We walked together like nothing had changed. Like everything was still intact. But I knew better. I felt it in every word I didn't say. The evening dragged. Dinner was filled with stories, inside jokes, and updates. I sat there, watching myself from outside my own body, wondering how many lies people could tell in a single conversation. My partner wrapped an arm around me at one point and whispered, "I've missed you." I smiled and nodded, but something inside me didn't respond. It just sat there, quiet and numb. Later, I went out to the porch alone. I needed air. Space. My phone buzzed. It was Liam. One message. I meant every second. I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either. I just sat there, staring at the dark horizon, realizing I couldn't undo what had been done. When I walked back in, my partner was already getting ready for bed. The casual routine of it all felt surreal, like I was stepping into someone else's life. I climbed in beside them, and they kissed my shoulder. I closed my eyes and tried to feel something. Tried to remember what it felt like to be fully present here. But my body was here and my mind was still on the beach. Still under his hands. Still hearing the way he said my name like it meant something. I turned off the light and stared at the ceiling, wide awake. Wondering how long I could keep living in two different worlds before one of them collapsed. The next morning felt like a performance. Every smile, every casual comment, all of it rehearsed in real time. My partner seemed happy, rested, oblivious. They made breakfast, asked about the trip, mentioned how great Liam seemed. I nodded along, answered when necessary, avoided eye contact whenever possible. I kept waiting for something to give me away, a tone shift, a pause too long, an expression I couldn't control. Nothing did. That almost made it worse. Liam stayed distant. We crossed paths a few times, but didn't speak more than necessary. There were glances, brief ones, but no more than that. It felt like we'd skipped over some expected scene of aftermath and gone straight into the quiet fade out. It wasn't cold, just over. I thought it would crush me, but what hurt more was the fact that it didn't. It just sat there in my chest, unresolved, unspoken, but real. My partner wrapped their arm around me while we walked along the beach later that afternoon, pointing out shells, making plans for the next trip. I answered with soft hums, polite laughter, and nods. They didn't notice the way I looked toward Liam when he wasn't looking. Or maybe they did and decided not to ask. Either way, the silence worked in both our favors. That night, my partner fell asleep quickly. I stayed up, sitting on the floor beside the bed, staring at a blank text message screen. I typed Liam's name, erased it, typed again. Finally, I just wrote, "I don't know what I'm doing."
I didn't hit send.
I saved it in drafts like some confession that didn't deserve delivery. I spent the next day watching Liam exist like none of it had happened. He was polite, casual. When he laughed with someone else, it cut more than I expected. It wasn't jealousy. It was proof that the world hadn't stopped just because mine had shifted. When he finally caught me alone, he said, "I wasn't expecting anything from you, but I hope you don't lie to yourself about what it meant." I wanted to be angry. I wanted him to say something messier, something that would justify the ache I was carrying around like a second skin. But he didn't. He walked away with that same quiet certainty that made me fall into him in the first place. When the trip ended and we packed up, it all felt mechanical. Hugs, photos, everyone pretending this was just another great memory for the books. Liam hugged me like he did everyone else. No extra squeeze, no whisper. But when he pulled away, he looked at me just long enough to make it clear he wasn't going to chase me. The car ride home with my partner was filled with music and small talk. I watched the road, nodded in the right places, forced out comments that felt normal. At one point, they reached over and held my hand. I held back. My fingers were steady, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. The days that followed were quiet. My partner slipped back into routine like nothing had changed. And maybe for them, nothing had. But I couldn't go back to autopilot. I started noticing every silence between us, every gap in our conversations, every time I reached for my phone and stopped myself. I found reasons to be alone more often. Late walks, errands that took longer than they needed to, long showers where I sat on the floor and let the water run until it went cold. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not a friend, not a therapist, not even myself out loud. But I started pulling back in small ways. The connection between me and my partner grew thinner, like a thread fraying one strand at a time. They tried in their own way. But I wasn't there anymore. I didn't speak to Liam again. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew it would open a door I couldn't close. I wasn't ready to walk through it, and I wasn't strong enough to keep it half open. So I left it shut.
Locked.
But not forgotten. Weeks passed. Then months. My relationship hung on by muscle memory. I kept waiting for a fight, for something dramatic to force a decision. It never came. Just the slow, dull realization that we'd become something hollow. Polite, functional, and empty. One night, after another quiet dinner, I asked my partner if they were happy. They looked at me like the question had never occurred to them. They said, "Of course." But the pause before the answer was louder than the words.
I didn't respond.
I just nodded and got up to do the dishes. That night, I opened the message draft again. Read the unsent text. Deleted it. Then I started a new one. I don't know what's next. But I can't keep pretending I'm where I want to be. I didn't send that either.
But I didn't delete it this time.
Because some truths don't need an audience to be real. Sometimes, knowing them is the first step to finally choosing yourself. And that's where I was, on the edge of something honest, raw, and terrifying. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the fall.